Hey, Sound Up fans, it's Mark Goodman here. To stay connected to everything happening in the world of music, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light. Join the conversations, experience live events, and be a part of the podcast. To get in on the action, check out our website at sounduppod.com. Like and follow us on social media at sounduppod and email us at connect@sounduppod.com.
This is Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters.
Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
This week on Sound Up, author Peter Ames Carlin joins us to discuss his new book, Tonight in Jungleland, The Making of Born to Run.
Also, Justin Timberlake reveals his Lyme disease diagnosis. An Oasis fan dies after a tragic fall at Wembley. Rolling Stone names our friend Shirley Halperin as the first ever female co-editor-in-chief. And we've got live reviews, Bob Dylan, Willie Nelson, the Goo Goo Dolls, and more.
Wow, what a show. Of course, we got your comments included as well. Reviews, we've got our new music picks of the week. Bing! All right, let's get into some reviews. Apparently, you guys are out seeing music. I was in the woods this weekend. I didn't see any music.
Nothing wrong with being in the woods on a summer weekend. That's okay, too.
It was awesome. You saw the Outlaw show, Alan.
I did see the Outlaw Festival tour at Jones Beach on Friday night. I'm going to rein myself in because obviously I could do this for hours. The bill was, from the bottom up, Lucinda Williams, Wilco, Bob Dylan, and Willie Nelson. I'm going to sidebar for 1 second and talk about a different Lucinda show that I saw last week and then jump back in because also last week,
wow,
Lucinda Williams was in New York City because she opened a new bar that she is a co-owner and the front person of, new bar called Lucinda's on Avenue A down in the East Village in the spot that used to be Brownies, for those of you who are old school New York City indie rock fans. And Lucinda played the opening night with her band, full set for about, 150 people, maybe. I don't know.
Wow.
I was 3 feet in front of her watching her sing. And it was totally a blast. Great to see her, right up close. She continues to get stronger, returning
I was just
from
about
the
to
stroke.
say, how is she?
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I saw her, she was still sitting to sing. Then she was standing, but bracing herself, holding a chair. She isn't playing guitar yet, but she is standing fully on her own and playing and, and leading the band. And so that was super fun on Tuesday, which turned out to basically be a rehearsal gig for the Outlaw set that she played on Friday. She played pretty much the same set, mixed up a couple of songs, but so she was great at Jones Beach, but I got to say it was more fun seeing her in a little tiny club on Avenue A earlier in the week. So we'll restrict Lucinda to that. Wilco were great as they are. Look, I love this band. We know I love this band. They are such a different, always you forget, different and ferocious band on a stage. Like the records are what they are. And then they go out and play live and just, blast. And Nels Cline goes nuts and the guitar sounds are crazy. And, it was fun to catch up and see them again. They closed with, it was Jerry Garcia's birthday. It's funny because they played something earlier in the set that I was like, oh yeah, in case you're wondering if these guys are deadheads, like listen to this. And then to honor Jerry, they closed the set with US Blues on Friday. So there was that.
Is it not weird, but is it something to note that Wilco was on this bill? I mean, and is an Outlaw?
I mean, they're only doing, it's a rotating, it's Bob and Willie and a cast of, different undercard in different cities. I think Lucinda's doing 3 dates. I think Wilco may only be doing 2. This was the only night that it was this for as the lineup. Right. And, it strays a little bit from a sort of straight alt country thing. There's other, I think Nathaniel Rateliff's got some dates. Sheryl Crow's got some dates. It extends a little bit beyond that. And Wilco, they've played with Bob before. They did many years ago that Americana Rama tour, if you remember. So I think they're just psyched to do it. I mean, we were saying there's no way that the undercard bands are making any money. Like, there's no way the money adds up on this, which is probably why people are like, we'll do a couple for the fun of doing it. But, that's not our summer tour plans.
Was it with Jones Beach? Was it sold out or close?
It was pretty full. It felt pretty full. And they're doing Jones Beach and Jersey and Hartford. So there's a lot in the region, but it felt pretty full. And then we get to Bob and Willie.
Yes.
Bob Dylan, age 84. This was show number, I don't know, 110, 112 for me, something like that. And I got to say, he sounded great. He sounded great. He stayed at the piano all night. He did not get up, but his voice was very strong. He was very engaged in this. It's a characteristically scattered set list. About a third of the set are old, pretty obscure blues and country covers.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, they're not songs you know. There's like a Bo Diddley song and a Charlie Rich song, and it's not like there's any comparison. You're just like, oh yeah, that's an old blues song. But he sounded really, into it when he was doing those. Did a fantastic sort of almost like ambient recitation version of this song, Till I Fell in Love with You, from Time Out of Mind. Like not just a whatever song, but playing it with just sort of rumbling, drums and occasional guitar stabs behind him. And it was amazing. A really nice All Along the Watchtower in a totally different arrangement. Doesn't sound anything like the Hendrix arrangement. Played it for my wife yesterday, who was like, yeah, this is great. Couldn't figure out which song it was until...
That's classic Dylan right there.
for one of the biggest songs, right? So Bob was great, and the set was really good, but I got to tell you, I was there with a bunch of my friends, and we all walked out of there only talking about Willie Nelson.
Tell me.
Because Willie was unbelievably great. He is 92 years old. He is up on that stage. Let me tell you what the band arrangement is when Willie's on stage. 2 acoustic guitars, a stand-up bass, and a drum kit that consists of 1 snare drum, mostly played with brushes.
Just not even a cymbal?
Not even a cymbal, not even a kit, nothing. There is no, and his harmonica player playing some of the solos, Mickey Raphael playing some of the solos. There is nowhere for him to hide. There is nothing that covers up. Like, he is naked out there. It is him with a little bit of sound. He's soloed on, I believe, every single song. He was working, like, it's Willie Nelson. The songs are going to be the great songs, but what was his stamina going to be? What was his strength going to be? Like, what he's just physically capable of doing. And I could not believe how much he gave in this set, how much he played. The other guitar player kind of takes the lead vocal every 4 or 5 songs or something, clearly to give Willie a rest. He still sings the backup and still solos on those songs. It's not like I'm just going to sit these out and hang out. For both Bob and Willie, seeing these guys at this age digging this deep to continue to explore these songs, to continue. For Bob, it's I'll play these other weird songs or I'll rearrange them totally. For Willie, it's just every song is like he starts it and people just go crazy, right? He sings the first line of Always on My Mind and people are screaming. He sings, but he's such a jazz singer and he's such a jazz player. Obviously, he doesn't have the facility that he had as a young man with, they'd show the close up on his fingers and you're like, whoa, my God, how are you, but he's going for something every song. And the run at the close of the set, he did this song that came out not that long ago. It's a Tom Waits song called Last Leaf on the Tree. I think we talked about it when it came out maybe earlier this year, late last year. A really sorrowful, I'm the last leaf on the tree when I go, that it'll be the next seeds or whatever it is. He did that. You're weeping. He followed that with Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I Die. And then to close, brought out the Wilco guys and did Will the Circle Be Unbroken and I'll Fly Away to close the set.
Oh,
and
man.
he's like, oh my God, if he's not the greatest living American, he's sitting right up there at the top of the list.
Wow. Glorious springs to mind. It sounds glorious.
It was extraordinary. And I'm so glad to have gone. And we got a beautiful night on Friday, which Jones Beach is great when you get a nice night out there. But these guys were so inspiring. And again, I'm a psychotic Bob fan. We know that. I was going first and foremost always for that, and have only been listening to Willie Nelson records since Friday night.
Wow. That's great.
So that's what I got. I kept it relatively modest. Roger, you also had a multi-act show to report on.
I did. While you were at Jones Beach, I was at the PNC Bank Arts Center in New Jersey to see Dashboard, Confessional, and the Goo Goo Dolls.
relative children.
Yes.
By comparison, yes.
two generations down. Yes.
2 generations. And it was a really great night for a bunch of reasons. One, the Goo Goo Dolls and Jon are buddies of ours from our Days of Volume.
Mm-hmm.
Chris from Dashboard's been on this podcast, and I've known him for a long time. And I try to get to see both bands every time they play in town because I'm fans of both. But for Dashboard, this was interesting. It's the first time I've seen them as a support act on a bill. Normally I go to a Dashboard show, they're the headliner, it's their show. So this was really interesting. It was a sold out show at PNC Bank, which is, about 14,000 people. This is a packed place. And clearly, for Dashboard, you've got your fans, but you're playing for a Goo Goo Doll crowd. And these two bands really do complement each other kind of musically, but it was interesting to watch, Dashboard come on to an audience that's still filling into the arena.
Right.
And as people are hearing them start crowding in and watching the audience grow by song. And also I sat in the audience for that performance and watching people who didn't, Goo Goo Dolls fans who weren't very well versed with them going, who are these guys? This is great. Like they were real, like it was a very smart thing to do this tour because they're definitely converting fans. All these years later, they're still converting fans to what they do. And they just put on a powerhouse show. You get your Dashboard fans, they're singing every song, so they know the lyrics, they know the call and response. And it was just great. They're a great live act. It was a great night. The weather was great. And then the Goo Goo Dolls come on, which is kind of a hometown show for them. Jon living in New Jersey. And this sold out crowd is just insane. They put on a fantastic show, and it's hit after hit after hit of great songs, couple deep cuts. Robbie sings a few. Jon is very energetic. They've got a great sounding band. And they just, to say they're having a moment would be odd because they've been doing this for several summers in a row where they go out on these summer tours, different acts with them.
Yep.
And they consistently sell out and they consistently get great audiences, so to say they're having a moment is kind of odd. They're just very consistently releasing new music. They played a couple new songs.
This is a big thing for them. We haven't heard from them in a while.
They've got a couple new just singles that are out. Mm-hmm. One released, I think, that day, and sound great and go well with the classics that It was just a great night. Those two bands really complement each other. I got to say, it was a good double bill to see outdoors in the summer. So was thrilled to see two of my favorite bands just kind of at top of their game. So that was great.
Love that.
Good night for music around Friday night.
How about that?
Absolutely.
And the new Goose thing is produced by our friend Greg Wattenberg, who if people have seen some of our promo shots we shot in his studio. But Greg has been working with John Resnick for, 20 years, 15 years, something like that. And has been sort of spouting about how great John is now, how his writing is growing, how his voice still sounds incredible. Not that he's an old guy by any means, but it's a lot of years. It's a lot of years, and he sounds great. I'm excited.
Yeah, they dropped a single called "Not Goodbye" on August 1st. Played it, and yeah, like I said, I hope this single is part of more stuff to come because they really are just kind of firing on all cylinders. So good stuff.
All right. So there's a fast look at what was happening musically around here. We always love to hear from you. We're assuming that you're going out and you're going to see live music as well. That being the case, we would love to hear your reviews.
The address is connect@sounduppod.com to email us with voice messages or written messages. And I know I had people at Lollapalooza this weekend. There's stuff to report on out there. It's the summer. So we want to hear what your stops are and what you think about it. Connect@sounduppod.com.
Also, we've been talking summer song, and I don't know about you guys. I got nothing. I got no summer song. There's a couple of songs that reference summer that have come out that are good, but I can't nominate them for song of the summer.
This is going to be the summer without a song.
It's going to be. How sad.
Tells you something about something, but
but I'm right? You guys don't have anything, right?
It's very hard to point to anything and say it feels like it defines this moment, this summer at all. It really is.
All right. Well, prove us wrong. Prove us wrong. What do you got?
Is there something for you?
Yeah. I mean, I've got a front runner right now, but it's a great song, but it's not like a huge hit. It's that new King Princess song, Cry, Cry, Cry.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's a great
It's my
song.
favorite
but,
song
like,
of this
it's
summer
not-
so far.
But the question isn't what's your favorite song of the
Right.
summer. It's with
I know.
the song.
The
of
song,
the
right? The
summer.
song that says, "Oh, that was the summer of 25." Yes, when we get to new music towards the end of the show, a couple of things that I have could be summer songs. I would vote for them for song of the summer if only they would have come out like 2 months ago,
Right.
and had a chance to build. But we'll get to that a bit later on. Meantime,
Couple of news items.
yeah, man, we got there's been stuff going on. I guess we should start with the bad news, the sad news about Oasis and what in fact has happened at one of their shows, the Wembley show. In fact, a man in his 40s died from injuries that he sustained from a fall while attending the Oasis show at Wembley. BBC is reporting that authorities responded to this call in the middle of the show, 10 o'clock at night. His name and age has not been released. That's,
It's awful.
it's awful.
I'm a little I don't want this to sound. I don't mean this to sound callous at all. It's a thing that I am surprised doesn't happen more.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just the nature of stadiums full of people and people up in higher balconies and people doing dumb things or reaching over or dropping their beer or whatever it is.
And drinking, yeah.
Stuff doesn't happen, and God knows what the circumstances were around this. I'm glad we only hear about it, very, very occasionally, but terrible thing to imagine for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, London police indicated the man, as you said, was in his 40s, and in a statement they said, it's a quote, "The stadium was busy. We believe it is likely a number of people witnessed the incident or may knowingly or unknowingly have caught it on mobile phone video footage." So I guess they're still trying to look back to see if they can, reconstruct what happened.
Right.
The Gallagher brothers and the band made a statement that followed saying, "We are shocked and saddened to hear of the tragic death of a fan at the show last night. Oasis would like to extend our sincere condolences to the family and friends of the person involved." But I guess, show didn't stop, band didn't know. It's not like, anybody, I mean, obviously somebody was aware of what happened and they came in and pronounced him dead on scene.
Dead at the scene, man, oh man. I mean, even understandably, Wembley is massive. And if something's going on in the back of the stadium, you can understand. And yet.
Yeah, but statement, concert went ahead as planned. Police have asked anyone who witnessed the incident to contact them. So they're just trying to play catch up with, what might have happened.
Oof.
Other sad news that maybe you saw was Justin Timberlake announcing his diagnosis with Lyme disease and the cancellation of some shows. Initially, Justin said he believed the fatigue and pain that he'd been experiencing on the road were just part of getting older and going back on tour. He just finished up these tour dates. He pushed through for months. And there were reviews that were saying, if you saw this, and audience complaints saying he's super low energy, he's not dancing,
Right.
These shows are terrible, what's going on? Like there were a lot of complaints. And he hit the end of this run and announced this diagnosis, which again brought clarity to a series of unexplained issues that he's been dealing with. Wife Jessica Biel, according to a source, felt like something was off with her husband's health and encouraged him to get checked out. She could tell that he wasn't himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he announced his diagnosis in a social post saying he wanted to shed some light on what I've been up against behind the scenes. If you've experienced this disease or know someone who has, then you're aware. Living with this can be relentlessly debilitating, both mentally and physically. He said he was shocked for sure to receive the diagnosis, but at least I could understand why I would be on stage and in a massive amount of nerve pain or just feeling crazy fatigue or sickness. So for now, the plan is to rest and heal and try to figure out how to fully get his health back, that these dates are done, and he'll figure out what comes next. But for now, focusing on trying to get better, which with this disease can be a really lengthy, really difficult, and ultimately may or may not feel better.
It is really something that, and not the first person in that position. How many artists do we know who have gotten Lyme disease and it's really sidelined their career for a chunk of time.
Yeah, I think Kathleen Hanna talked about it a lot in the doc on her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if you have friends, I mean, I know people who have struggled for years and years and years, so it's
Yeah.
not, you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if it's going to be a thing. So Justin said, I was reluctant to talk about this because I was always raised to keep something like this to yourself. But I'm trying to be more transparent about my struggles so that they aren't misinterpreted. Sharing all of this with the hope that we can all find a way to be more connected. I'd like to do my part to help others experiencing this disease too.
Not alone, though. I mean, Sydney Sweeney,
No.
I think at one point announced that she was Ben Stiller, Shania Twain. There's a number of people who have been diagnosed with Lyme disease. Debbie Gibson, an old friend of mine, also battled it for years. It takes sometimes to get over it.
But very interesting that given the bad press that he was getting around these performances, that
Yeah.
actually something was up, that this was a physical thing. That, look, Justin, we know he's had his ups and downs on and off the stage. And of course, immediately you go to like, yeah, he's screwing up again, but
Right.
not, seemingly not the case. And hopefully this is, does not turn into one of these protracted, really, really difficult cases of the disease.
Finally, in the news, and this is great news. And I mean, I'm just going to start it, Alan, as a former editor at Rolling Stone. I want to hear you weigh in. Our friend Shirley Halpern, along with Sean Woods, have been named co-editors in chief of Rolling Stone magazine. We're really, really happy for our friend Shirley. I give her credit. I think it's gutsy at this point to take a gig like that, because what the hell is that entity going to do? I know she's excited and is looking forward to moving them into the future. Who knows what that is?
Who knows? She's coming over, Shirley, of course. In recent years, she was at Variety. She's most recently coming over from being the co-editor-in-chief of The Hollywood Reporter.
Right.
But is about to step in and become the first female with the editor-in-chief title at Rolling Stone. Should say Sean Woods he's the executive editor. He's been there for many, many years. And it's pretty evident that will mean, he will run the non-music stuff and she will run the music stuff. I mean, it's a pretty clean split in terms of what their areas of expertise are. Sean really has for a long time overseen the features and the politics and the, that end of the Rolling Stone operation.
Right.
So co-editor-in-chief is a weird structure, I will say. In the end, who's in charge and who makes the call is always a thing. But I think at this point, their coverage is so expansive in both directions that finding somebody who's going to be able to do the whole scope of that is a complicated thing. So my sense is that it'll mean turning over the keys to the music stuff to Shirley, and as you said, we'll see where it all goes.
You were there, and look, all print magazines have gone through, I want to say, horrendous changes because of the advancement in tech. What do you think her challenge is? What do you think she might try and do while she's there?
The challenges are evident. The magazine is not driving what Rolling Stone is and has not for a long time. It remains an anchor.
Right.
It remains a defining thing for a defining brand that I think still has meaning, power, credibility. But how you grow that in this environment, what your social what your social platforms look like, what your online coverage is, what your events and everything that happens off the page, how, it is all about how can you extend something like Rolling Stone beyond being thought of as a magazine. And that's been the challenge for years and years, and it continues to evolve at warp speed. It does seem like they've been very effective. I mean, I don't know. I don't see the numbers, but it does feel like a lot of their non-music stuff, a lot of their political coverage, is up. You see it pulled on CNN and MSNBC, and the original reporting that they're doing is definitely significant in the mix of where the world is. How do you try and get that back on the music side, where it's everybody jump in the pool, everybody can cover the same stuff, everybody, how do you distinguish yourself and what do you do with that? But very excited to see what the next phase looks like for my my first employer. We,
That's great. Could you explain your first employer?
I interned at Rolling Stone when I was in college, and after a couple of quick stops elsewhere, my first job that I stayed at for an extended period of time was starting in the research department, and then eventually becoming a senior writer at Rolling Stone. This is where I cut my teeth, and one story, one issue to the next, whatever it is around the place, it's always going to be very, very close to my heart. It's where I learned how to do all this stuff.
It's fantastic. Congrats to Shirley, of course, she being a friend, and to Sean as well, who's just continuing.
Sean's earned it. I mean, Sean has put in his time,
no question.
And again, I think it was that sense of like, well, what's the right way to put the different pieces together? So hopefully, it's plays to everybody's strength and maximizes what they can do.
Really looking forward to it. Shirley is a superstar, and I can't wait to see what she does going forward. All right, we're going to take a pause here. Pretty excited. Our friend Peter Ames Carlin joining us in just a couple of minutes. A guy who has already taken some serious deep dives into Bruce Springsteen land.
But the new book, Tonight in Jungleland, commemorating the 50th anniversary this month of Born to Run.
Peter Ames Carlin joins us next. Welcome back to Sound Up. We are very, very excited. We've got a special guest joining us, actually an old friend. We've had Peter Ames Carlin on our show back on Sirius XM, and happy to welcome Peter back.
Peter's written a bunch of great music books, an excellent Paul Simon biography, a history of Warner Brothers Records, recently a book about REM. And this month, in celebration later this month of the 50th anniversary of the release of Born to Run, this week, Peter has out in the world Tonight in Jungleland, the making of Born to Run. And so we welcome Peter to discuss this landmark occasion and diving back into the world of Bruce Springsteen, which is a world that he has certainly entered before.
Deeply.
Yeah, Peter, welcome and congratulations. And I guess to start, should say, you wrote a really good Bruce bio a number of years back. Other than the occasion of the anniversary, what drew you to go back in and dig into the Born to Run story specifically?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to see you guys. It's great to be back. I'm honored, and I'm delighted to be here. Why? And I was delighted to dive back into the world of Bruce Springsteen, because is there a better place in American music in which to swim? For me, at any rate, I mean, I've been a long time fan, and I don't know if follower is the right word, but I've admired Bruce's work and followed it step by step since I was in high school, which now is, well, some time ago, the late 1970s. And the idea of, after having written the biography, I had a huge archive of leftover material. And so I was kicking around the idea for a new book after I finished the REM thing and had a little time to chill. And then I thought, maybe I should look in that Springsteen archive and see what jumps out at me. And then I realized that this 50th anniversary was coming up, and that was like, oh, obviously I'll do that. So I sold the idea to my friends at Doubleday, who I just did the REM book with, and they were like, cool, yeah, do that, but you have to have it done in 6 months because we need the. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't really have any social plans for the next 6 months anyway, so off I went, and I dove into that box of stuff, knowing that there would be a ton of leftover Born to Run material, and fairly quickly realized that I really didn't have a whole lot of leftover Born to Run material. So I began to book flights and call people up and say, we need to talk. And so I did a lot of very fast on my feet reporting in the early summer of last year. And then about midsummer, I just shut the door and went into my office and started writing. And I did some other stuff after that. When I saw Bruce in the fall after his summer tour had ended, and I got to see that show at Asbury Park at the See Here Now Festival, which was extraordinary. And then we spoke after that show, and then on his birthday, which was 8 or 9 days after that. So that's the thing. And then there's this essential mystery about Born to Run, which my old friend Charlie Cross described not long before he passed away. So tragically last summer, he said, how did it all get so great? And it's like, well, he's got a point. Those first two records are really, really good, but they ain't Born to Run. And
that's what I was going to ask you about. What was the stakes here for Bruce? His first two records tanked. He was, when he got signed, it was like, oh my God, this guy, I've seen the future of rock and roll. And his first two records tanked. So what are the stakes going into this? What is his state of mind? Is he fierce? Is he fearful? What does the band think?
And again, that's the other thing that really struck me when I began to think about writing this book, is recalling that by 1978, when I really tuned into Bruce, he was already really big on the East Coast. But in Seattle, where I was from, it was very fringy stuff. Some cool people knew about it, but hardly anyone did. So those first couple of years before
Still
the river,
like that on the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, there was this sense of like, it could go either way for this guy. He could be big, or he could like fall to the wayside and we'll never hear from him again. And so once, to listen to those records and to kind of get it was to go, I really want this guy to make it. But for a long time, and especially before Born to Run, those first two records didn't do very well. And the people that brought him in, especially Clive Davis, who was the head of Columbia Records in 1972 when Bruce got signed, heard his demos and was like, I am all about this guy, and really got behind him. But after the first record came out in January 73, it sold maybe 20,000 copies, which was nowhere close to what even fringy bands were doing in those days. And then Clive got fired for strange reasons. So there was a change in the administration at Columbia, and the new gang who came in didn't know Bruce, didn't like Bruce's work, and saw the numbers and just figured like, this guy's not going anywhere. So after the first couple records, there was a sense in the executive floor that maybe we should just drop this guy, cut bait. He's got one more album on his deal, but he's not going.
Run it out and be done with it. Yeah.
And so when Bruce's then manager, Mike Appel, called into Columbia to say, we're ready to record the third album, we need the money, they were like, hold up. We don't know if we're going to do a whole third album. We'll give you enough money to make a single. And if that sounds like something that could get on the radio, then you get the rest of the budget for the album. And they sent them off, and with this charge, come up with a single. But fortunately, Bruce had started writing the song Born to Run, and began to talk very seriously with Mike Appel about, I think, like, obviously I need to evolve something here. Like what, and Mike Appel was a successful pop songwriter, and they just began to talk about, well, what do you do? Like, what are great pop songs written? What are they like? How are they structured? What do you need to do? And fortunately, it coincided with the direction that Bruce was already going in.
And one thing that is really striking, and you mentioned Mike Appel, Mark mentioned, I've seen the future of rock and roll, is when Bruce brings Jon Landau into the inner circle. And when there's this pull between Appel, between Landau, and pivotally, I think in the book what comes across is Landau saying, look, you guys are a great live band, but that is different than making a record.
Yeah. Well, Mike Appel, Bruce signed with Mike Appel in early 72, and Mike very quickly got him signed to Columbia, and was a huge, fierce advocate for him, and really went to the wall for Bruce in a variety of ways. He really got it, like one of the first people to really get it about Bruce, and fought like hell, invested everything into it, and got him to a point where the shows were really doing well in the clubs that they played. They were making cool records, but the records weren't quite getting across. And they're touring and touring and touring and trying to figure out what to do. And in the spring of 1974, Jon Landau, who was then mostly a critic and a writer and an editor at Rolling Stone, went to a show in Boston and was like, oh, he'd heard the records, and then he went to a second show and had this transformative experience, which he wrote into a column that featured that line, I've seen rock and roll future, and its name is Bruce Springsteen. And at that moment was, because of John's reputation in the music media, that really kind of solidified Bruce's position at Columbia. It was a part of that. And so Bruce and John became friends, and John had produced some records earlier, one for Livingston Taylor, one for the MC5, and some other things, and was interested in pursuing that. And so they talked more, and John had a lot of thoughts about how you get a stronger sound on the vinyl. Because the problem for you guys is that your shows sound great, but your records sound a little hollow, and John's feeling was, in order to make a great studio album that sounds live, you need to lean into the studio aspect and layer the recordings. Just get a basic rhythm track and overdub all the other parts, which was not the way Bruce worked before. But they thought, okay, we'll go to a better studio in New York City. We're going to record in this layered overdubbing way and really try to make this the most powerful sound we can. Especially given the new songs that Bruce had been writing and what he was bringing into this. It was obviously a time to make a dramatic shift in their recording tactics.
How easy was that shift? What were those sessions like, giving birth to each of these songs, these these huge statements, these 7 and 8 minute songs, and really autobiographical stuff, really personal stuff?
It is, in a way, because and there was an interesting parallel between what was going on in Bruce's life and this existential moment that he was facing, where he was afraid that he was going to lose his career. And since his music and his career is such an essential part of what he is as a person, and what he needed to do to express himself and the life and to live the life he was determined to live, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of, it was a gutsy record. He was doing a lot of really, making a big stand about how he was going to look, how he was going to sound, what he was saying. But his feeling of fear and of things kind of degrading around him was matched by what was going on in society in the post-60s, post-Vietnam, post-Watergate moment, where it kind of felt like American society was crumbling. There was a gas shortage. You couldn't just jump in your car and drive anywhere, which is, which I believe is in the Constitution. It's a very essential American thing. Well, that's a large part of American idealism, is that if things are going bad, if you're not happy, you can just hop in your car and go somewhere else and become a whole other person. Right. So that's the new world. And so that seemed to be falling apart. But Bruce's fear about how his life might be falling apart mirrored that. So his autobiographical songs, particularly a song like Jungleland, which is very long and complicated and dark and eerie in places and enormous in other places, traces this character, the Magic Rat, who is essentially an avatar for Bruce and Bruce's experience of going to New York City and building a career and being chased by the maximum lawmen, who are after you for some reason and are not fans. And by the end of the song, the poor Magic Rat, gets gunned down by his own dreams. And, and it's like, that was Bruce's fear of what was going to happen to him. So this whole album is fueled by that level of desperation and need and fear, but also super gutsy, taking a stand for yourself. That's where he was.
This may be a stupid question, but, a thing that comes up a number of times in the book is sort of explicitly or implicitly the way this was an attempt to make the greatest album of all time.
Yeah, I know.
I've been thinking about that. And there's really only, everybody goes to make their best record. Everybody's trying to do their best work. But there's only a couple of things that I would really point to and say, you actually feel that ambition.
Yeah.
Sgt. Pepper was, we're going to make the greatest album of all time. London Calling was, we're going to make the greatest album of all time. But very few that actually have that ambition to them. What is that in any sort of practical, meaning? Like, what does that actually mean for him to say, I'm going to go do this thing that nobody's ever done before?
Yeah, he was attempting a kind of cold fusion, which was to merge the sort of visceral excitement of Elvis, the rocker in black leather, who can bring the sex and the immediacy and the physicality to rock and roll and make it exciting. And, the intellectual heft of Bob Dylan. How is that possible? Can you do that? And his attempt to do that, I mean, the fact that he was already finding that middle ground with the first two records to a degree were a large part of what drew critics to him in such throngs, because rock critics and people like us are nothing if not like, over intellectual nerds who secretly want to be Elvis, right? So because you want to be sexy and hot and exciting and make the girls scream. But who can do both those things? This guy from New Jersey, as it turns out. And he had that sense. He had this sense that maybe he was touched in that way. And so setting out to make the greatest album of all time it's a steep hill, obviously. But on the other hand, let's don't forget that when Bruce, who called himself the Boss, gave himself that nickname and then to sort of introduced it so that everyone else took it up, was teaming up with Jon Landau, who maybe jokingly, maybe not jokingly, decided to call himself the king of the rock critics. So these are guys who have a pretty heady sense of what their potential is already. The Boss and the King are getting together to make the best, and so Bruce has this idea that he really wants to make a record that's going to be, that's a whole new level of, excitement and intelligence and achievement. And he was going to hoist the sort of tattered banner of, the original rock and rollers and tidy it up, sew it back together again, and loft it into the 1970s.
What was it about these songs and the way that he was writing now that led to an album that became arguably one of the biggest records of all time?
Definitely one of the most influential and highest regarded albums of all time.
I mean, if you look at the track, there's 8 songs. Every single one of those songs got radio play. Every one. Yeah. Maybe not in LA, but a lot of other places. And yet from the end, certainly there was a lot of angst and a lot of deep thought and beautiful caricatures of people in the world. And then he goes on, the next album is Darkness. Yes. Right? So yes. What was going on now with these songs?
They are different. They are different from anything else that he ever did. I mean, they really are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very much it's a young man's album. It's a restless young man who has grown. I mean, all the characters in these songs are people who are making a stand of one sort or another. They've decided they absolutely have to, everyone is getting out of town. They're getting to that to that other place where we really want to go to walk in the sun. They're going to get on the road and take off. They're going to, even the guys in the low-level criminals in Meeting Across the River it's their last shot. They're going to take, and this time it's all going to work out for them. All of these songs have this same kind of restless sense of self-creation and escape, and that new world sense of finding the next great place and making a stand for yourself. And they're set to this very exciting kind of stripped down rock and roll, which often in a lot of these songs, there are direct references to earlier, original generation rock and roll stuff. There's the Bo Diddley beat on She's the One. There's the whole Phil Spector sound, the huge layered sound of Born to Run the Song and Backstreets to some degree. They're just very exciting, very basic rock and roll songs, built around really fundamental chord progressions. But, in that way that a great song can do, you take a simple musical structure, simple ideas, and transform them until they sound absolutely new and exciting and like a song you've been waiting to hear your whole life.
You mentioned you spoke to Bruce for the book. Did you find, is this stuff that's easy for him to access when you're talking Born to Run? Can he go back to that place in a way that feels natural for him, easy for him, or is it a thing that takes some massaging to really get him there?
Well, he had agreed to talk, to do an interview about this in the spring. When I first got the book deal, I wrote to those guys and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to do this." And they were like, "Oh yeah, we totally want to be in on that." So that was lovely to hear, but it was several months before we actually sat down. And he had been playing these songs on tour. It's like, the new tour, the most recent tour was, so in other words, I think all that stuff was very deep in his consciousness, and it's something that looms really close to his heart in terms of his sense of the story and the progress of his life.
But leaving the logistics, when you're sitting with him, as you've said, he's played these songs, some of them thousands of times for 50 years since then. To actually get back to that place, can he cut through all that, cut through what it is for him to do that song now to get to what it meant then?
I think so, because one thing, just for our interview, he had known for several months he was going to do it, so I think it was on his mind. And he'd been performing the songs and thinking about what connected Backstreets to the songs on the most Letter to You album, which are all about mortality and aging, as opposed to these young person songs. But on the other hand, the feelings are still essential and still there. So, and also I think as he thinks about his life and how he has become the person who he has been, and still is, obviously, that Born to Run moment, that was a transformative experience for him. And I think it's something, he's a person who is very self-aware and self-conscious and very sort of interested in his own progress as an artist, as a person. And I think Born to Run, the album, is a very, very significant piece of work for him. And that's why every time he tours, however he has designed the narrative of, this year's tour, Born to Run songs are always a huge part of it.
Huge.
And usually there's that transformative moment in the show. And I sort of traced it to Thunder Road when that's in the set list. That's kind of the point at which the darker energy in the earlier half of the show pivots and becomes the more celebratory thing.
Joyous.
You experience that in the course of that one song, which begins quietly and slowly picks up steam. And by the end of the song, it's a full-on anthem.
That and 10th Avenue Freeze Out, you've seen this current tour. He has turned that into such a beautiful tribute to the guys who are no longer with us.
And that's been something that he's been, that's obviously a crucial song for him, because it is simultaneously a party song. It's fun. It's an R&B song. It's got a groove. You can dance to it. It's hilarious, but it has a very serious subtext about community and about brotherhood and about the brotherhood of the band and how they, they're there for each other. You can sense that. That's the one song that, Clarence has such a key vocal line in the bridge where he's like, I'm all alone. And you hear Clarence in his sinister street voice going, "And kid, you better get the pictures," and it's like, and that's a very serious, it's funny, it's hilarious. But the fact that, Clarence's entry and Clarence's presence on that song means that character, that guy in that song, is going to be just fine. He's getting out of that scrape, no problem. They're going to tear that town in half.
I also love the story in the book of they bring the Brecker brothers in to do the horn parts, and what they're given to play is like super stiff, doesn't work. They're not getting it. And Steve Van Zandt, not in the E Street Band at this point, kind of says to everybody, "Look, I know how to write an R&B horn chart. Everybody get out of the way."
Yeah.
Puts that part together, and the Brecker brothers are like, "Yeah, that's kind of what you're right. That's what we need to be playing."
Well, the Brecker brothers weren't given a chart. They were because like in the R&B and rock and roll world, session players come in, you give them the chord chart and you go, "Okay, make up a part." But the world they come from, it's more orchestrated than that. And they were like, "Excuse me, what?" Like, okay. But they didn't know that world. That wasn't their corner of the music world. They were like, "What the hell are we going to do?" So what they came up with was, Roy Bittan said it sounded like a Chicago song, which would have been super appropriate for a lot of other bands in 1975. But it did not reference the R&B sort of lilt and swing that, obviously Steve Van Zandt knew had to be there. So they struggled with this. It wasn't working. Nobody knew why. And finally, Steve said, okay, I know what to do. And he went in there and he said, throw those charts away, guys. And they were a little bit, at first, they were a little aggrieved. Like, who is this little pisher from New York showing up and, or from New Jersey coming up here? But on the other hand, it's like he sang them these parts. And the moment they played them, they were like, yeah, no, this is way better. And they knocked it out like in 1 or 2 takes.
And that's a pretty important moment for Steve regarding the band, right? I mean, going forward. It was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
We can use him a lot more.
Yeah, he had been in earlier iterations of Bruce's band, and in fact showed up, was still a member of the band when they went to the first session for Greetings in 1972. But that was where Mike, I think, made it clear to Bruce, like, dude, we do not have the money to pay for a second guitar player. And so Bruce went to Steve and said, I hate to do this, but we kind of can't afford you. And it was crushing for Steve. And so he took off and then kind of found his way back into music. But so he was there. He had started working with Southside Johnny and was like producing and writing and doing stuff with them. And he'd done some other things. And when he did that so effectively and quickly and got it exactly right, that's when Bruce turned back to Mike Pell and said, I think it's time to put the kid back on salary.
The kid stays in the picture.
Yeah, exactly. And Mike was like, yeah, I think you're right. Bruce also had an idea that he wanted, as when the band was hitting the road again in a few weeks in July to start the Born to Run tour, he figured if he had a second guitar player, he would be freer to move around the stage and perform kind of a little more a la Elvis and not have to be wielding his guitar.
Where do you think that this record sits in his discography?
And part 2 to that, because you mentioned before how influential. Do you see it as influential, or do you see it as this thing unto itself? I mean, we know what it meant for Bruce's own career, but both within his work and then out in the rest of rock and roll, what happened from Born to Run?
Well, it was a pretty significant album in Meatloaf's career as well, because
fair enough.
Bat Out of Hell is nothing if not a kind of Born to Run Part 2. But, I mean, it was a super influential record. I mean, even though it was a turning point, but it wasn't a place that Bruce really returned to very much. It led him in a different direction. One of the interesting observations that Steve Van Zandt had was that Bruce established himself with Born to Run in his identity as the guy who leads, the guy who hits the road and finds greener pastures somewhere else. But when Darkness came out, he did a 180 and became the guy who stays, because that's a record that's so much about, finding an adult life where you are and finding a way to build a honorable sort of like satisfying existence, even despite all the typical adult burdens and disappointments. But sonically, again, it's a very striking record, but it's not a sound that he goes back to very often in the subsequent 50 years. He does from time to time, but his sound, he stripped down his sound a lot more by 1978. And that was kind of the feeling, the sound, the identity that he carried forward, really, even though, we still see the Born to Run image coming back. I mean, when they played the Super Bowl in 2009, remember? The first image that people saw when the show began was that shadow of Bruce and Clarence holding, Bruce has got his guitar and Clarence has got his saxophone, and they're back to back. And it's like, oh, those guys. Those guys. Those are cool guys.
50 years ago this month, Born to Run, out this week, tonight in Jungleland, the making of Born to Run from Peter Ames Carlin. Peter, a pleasure.
Thank
Good luck getting this thing up and out.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you guys, as always.
Thank you, Peter. All right. Many thanks to Peter Ames Carlin. I can't believe it. I want to say I've learned some stuff about Born to Run that I did not know.
I was going to say, because we didn't talk about it. We haven't talked about it off air. How do you feel about the notion of 50 years for Born to Run?
My back is really hurting me right now. Oh, God. It's frightening to hear that number attached to an album that for me feels, dare I say it, current.
Things can be timeless and can still sound great. It's just
Yeah.
facing
Yeah.
the reality of those numbers.
Yes, indeed. It's true. All right. We're going to wrap things up here, but before we go, we do love hearing from you. We've talked about that. You know, we have things. We're going to give you our new music picks in a moment. We've talked concert reviews earlier in the show. We love to hear from you on any of those things or whatever else might be on your mind. Connect at SoundUpPod is how you can reach out to us via audio message and email at SoundUpPod, at SoundUpPod, or sounduppod.com. We'll get you there as well.
Connect at sounduppod.com. Anything you want to send us, reviews, thoughts, reactions, responses, thoughts on 50 years of Born to Run, any shows you've been to that you want to talk about. We are eager to hear from you.
We'll jump to our new music picks of the week. And by Alan, I saw yours. You posted yours a bit earlier in our script here. I love what you picked. I got to say, I'm kind of shocked at what I picked. I mean, I love the blues just as much as the next guy. But this new Buddy Guy, yeah, that Buddy Guy
just turned 89 years old.
He is considered one of the architects, for God's sake.
Truly, probably the last of the greatest generation of the Chicago Blues players. And threw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field the other day. Looked great.
It's right. This is nonstop, this guy. So the album, Ain't Done with the Blues, and the new single just out. And this is, I feel like some people look at the blues these days as like, oh yeah, that was that all those years ago. It still sounds great. Buddy Guy, Ain't Done with the Blues is the album. How blues is that? Featuring Joe Walsh is such a kick-ass song. I mean, I didn't think I could ever get excited about, a blues riff again. And Joe singing the way that Joe does, it's so cool. It's freaking great. Joe Walsh, man, I love it.
Listen, Buddy Guy, for those who saw Sinners, when he swoops in at the end of that film and just
hell yeah,
blesses it with his presence is really pretty amazing. Still making new music. 89th birthday, not catching up to Willie quite yet, but
but shows no signs of slowing down whatsoever. It does your heart good to see that guy in that position. The other one that I picked, old friends, the Wood Brothers are back, and it's almost blues. Puff of Smoke is the name of the album. It just came out on Friday, and the first single is called The Trick. Just go and listen to it. I don't know if you've never heard of the Wood Brothers before, just go and check out The Trick. It totally rocks. And one of the great live bands ever as well. And I probably should mention that Buddy Guy did announce a tour. He's planning on going. In fact, he is out, I think, as we speak. So there's lots of great music out. The Wood Brothers also will be heading out on tour. And I'll just mention that they say about this song, The Trick, it's about how we beat ourselves up with self-doubt and constant worry, and how nice it would be to be more bold, to be more ignorant, which is easier said than done. Not giving a damn. That's what The Trick is about. That's the trick to stay happy. Many thanks to those guys for this one.
I didn't find a lot this week, but happy to pull this one. It's actually the second single from the upcoming album from Jon Batiste. And he went in to cut a version of the Ray Charles classic Lonely Avenue with Randy Newman. Ray Charles obsessive fans, both of them, obviously. And apparently this was cut. It's just that it's the two of them trading vocals, Batiste playing piano, and that's it. There's nothing else on the track. One take cut in Randy Newman's living room.
Oh, man.
You can hear them just sort of feeling their way through it. I mean, for those who know, a super slow kind of march of a song, an amazing, amazing song by Doc Pomus, and just a lot of, Randy's New Orleans thing with Batiste's New Orleans thing with Ray Charles as not the New Orleans architect, but the R&B architect. Randy, at this point, who has not been performing much in recent years, he kind of has shut things down mostly. I guess he did a couple songs on that John Mulaney show is the only thing he's done publicly in the last couple of years on Netflix. But came back in for this one, growling his way through it, and it's a cool one to hear. If it sounds like it's your speed, it's going to be your speed.
I haven't heard it yet, and I'm so glad that you pulled it. That's as every week, Alan. The stuff that I am like, oh, I didn't know that was out. I'm going to have to go and check that out.
Only so much any of us can do.
I love that. I really love that. So, all right, that's going to wrap it as far as new music goes this week, and that's going to wrap it as far as Sound Up goes this week. Remember to hear all of the music that we talk about, all of our new music picks. We have an ongoing playlist. You simply search our Sound Up soundtrack playlist on Spotify. Don't forget the exclamation point, Sound Up, exclamation point, or you can just go to sounduppod.com, click the Spotify link.
So give us a 5-star review, like our Facebook page, check us out and follow us on socials, connect at sounduppod.com for email, sounduppod.com for everything else. Stay in touch. We want to hear from you.
All right, that's it. We're done. We're out. We will catch you next week on Sound Up.
Sound Up is hosted by Mark Goodman and Alan Light, produced by Roger That Media, distributed by Revolver Podcasts. Theme music by Smile from Tokyo. For more information, go to sounduppod.com. Roger that.